All right. Welcome to yet another edition of Indigenization Appreciation Hour. As always, the chat box is already full of a lot of questions, so let me just get down to it. So, first up, we have a question from John who asks, is it possible to convert IAC-1, that is Indigenous Aircraft Carrier 1, into Catobar in future for fleet and air wing similarity? Well, I don't think this is really on the cards. I think IAC-1 will continue to be a stow-bar carrier for the foreseeable future. Even in the case of the INS Vikramaditya, there had been talk of using what is called a powder catapult, which has not been used for a very long time. And that, of course, went nowhere. And I just like INS Vikramaditya, the new Vikrant will also continue to be a stow-bar carrier. All right, next question. Moinak Borman asks, what is the update on the supersonic missile-assisted rocket torpedo SMART project? Why similar kind of projects by other nations were terminated? Well, similar. This is actually this is actually the most ambitious of this kind ever attempted from this sort of family. So. Well, in my view, obviously I can't speak for the Navy or DRDO or anything. In my view, I think the technology for actually locating targets, for locating and then, the means to prosecute them are there, but the means to basically locate them, I mean the means to do what is called RSTA, reconnaissance, surveillance, target acquisition will have to come up to speed for the optimal exploitation of such a system, and perhaps that is on the cards given the various developments that are happening in the field of artificial intelligence and of course high fidelity space-borne sensors, etc. Next question. Okay, Kopas. How will India replace its helicopter fleet? Rumor MRFA will be dumped. Well, let's keep aside the rumor, but if you're talking about, the Russian origin helicopters in our fleet, well, I think there are enough spares to keep them going for a while, for sure. And they'll be replaced with mostly indigenous, I think with indigenous types, actually. The IMRH project, which is a HAL project, I think has got a shot in the arm now. And I think all three services are going to be firmly on board with that. So that's going to replace the Mi-17 basically as a medium lift helo. And then you have these, these Kamov 31s and Kamov 28s that you need to replace. I guess something, maybe a HAL Dhruv variant will step up at least for the Kamov 27, 28 kind of role. Kamov 31, let's see. But at the moment, I don't think the Navy is overly worried about, the prospects of, about these particular helos. Whereas the Air Force, yes, it's probably a little worried about the Mi-17. But again, this is not the official Air Force view. This is my view. But I think they'll be able to keep them flying. Next question. Kartik Udupa asks, I read about Army's struggle with buying V-SHORADs and the problem with Russian systems in general. How long do we have to wait before there is an Indian variant? I don't know, because the Indian variant is definitely in the works. I think it's being fast-tracked probably, so maybe a couple of years. In a couple of years, you should be seeing, Indian V-SHORAD in at least at the user's trial stage, if not even further down the road. Okay, Pranavas. Is the Indian Navy out of commission because of Zarya Mashproekt and the state of the Antonov fleet, and have the Dalals finally learned not to outsource our security? Well, I can't speak for the Dalals, obviously. Is the Indian Navy out of commission? No, not yet. Obviously, there are consumable spares have been kept. They've been kept around. Now, as far as the Antonov 32 fleet is concerned, well, a lot of indigenization has been done with respect to the Antonov 32 fleet in terms of spares, sub-assemblies, even subsystems. So I think we'll be able to keep those flying as well. The news of the attack on Zaria project facilities is obviously not a very good development. But for the time being, perhaps the damage is limited. And this is one of the reasons why India has good relations with both Russia and Ukraine, and why India must now seriously try to play the role of a mediator between the two. But I can tell you one thing, after the 2014, after Crimea was annexed by Russia in 2014, Zaria project said that they would no longer be supplying, the Kogak systems for Russia's own Grigorievich class frigates and all that. And NPO Saturn started working on marine gas turbines in right earnest. Perhaps we might be able to get some stuff out of there as well. But then this is not something that we can say for sure. It only shows that the Kaveri marine gas turbine program should have been given much more resources much earlier. Anyway, I hope people have learned what it means to depend on others for military systems now. Okay, next question. Raghav, should we convert all our infantry divisions to mechanized divisions, or rapid is enough for that? Every army, every modern army wants to go from being motorized to mechanized, but it's not always so simple. It depends on what kind of funds you have at your disposal and a lot of other things. This is a much more, this is a sort of a weighty topic. Maybe we should come to this some other time. Okay, next question. Karthik asks, what is the reason that for engine development, they might have gone for saffron? They, as in the Indian side, I'm assuming, have gone for saffron since RR promised them IP and also know-how and know-why completely. When do you think this project would be completed? You are assuming a lot of things over here. Unless you have this thing about know-how and know-why was promised, it doesn't matter what has been reported. What has really happened, I don't think the media has been able to report. In any case, this project will be completed probably in another 7 to 8 years. That's my reading. That's my view. Anyway, next question. Arnab Chatterjee. How can India be capable of building highly complicated systems like CATS while not have a single indigenous male UAV in service? How would you compare the LCA Mark 1 FOC with J10 CE? Okay, so there are two questions here. First of all, we've crossed a threshold in terms of not just manned but unmanned systems as well. Today we have, India has the technology for things like ATOL, automatic takeoff and landing, even traffic collision avoidance system, SATCOM communication, all the building blocks are there. And then of course, in terms of AI and combat teaming also, unlike what you will hear some, avuncular people on Twitter and other places say, progress has been made in that respect as well. So I think HAL, DRDO, that is ADA, together can pull off a lot of things. Even AD, that lab, which is usually been the butt of jokes because of its long delayed programs, is now showing, more promising signs. And I think we are going to see much more coming out of it, much more that is usable and is actually inducted. Okay, how would you compare LCA Mark 1 FOC with J10 CE? Well, obviously J10 CE has an advantage here, but LCA Mark 1A, I would say, is comparable to J10 CE as far as, in fact, maybe better in terms of avionics and in terms of, the kind of radar capability it will have. Next question. And also, I'll tell you one thing, given what I have heard about the JF-17, and maybe DDR will one day do a nice long piece on it and make videos, I would not be very surprised if the J10 CE in Pakistan Air Force service doesn't see very high serviceability. Okay, next question. HAL 2021 asks, 2024 to 2029 will be boom years for Indian aerospace. Question is, are we inducting Tejas Mark II from 2027 and AMCF from 2030? Are we late in the game, or 4th gen is here to stay? 4th gen is quite clearly going to be in use for quite some time. I mean, why would you have the F-15EX then? When so many people went around saying that the F-15 is not survivable anymore in the face of modern defenses, and then they jumped into the F-15EX, F-15EX is not going to be any more or less survivable, even if you have, well, it's going to be probably a little more survivable because of onboard electronic warfare systems. But the thing is that, and you're going to see F-16s being in service, you're going to see the Rafale F-4. Everybody follows the oft-stated spiral development path. Okay, you have Gripen NG. So it stands to reason that you need to work on the baseline LCA platform and keep improving it and deliver a more affordable, both in terms of capital cost and in terms of life cycle costs, fighter, which will pull routine stops, which will be usable in many different roles. You don't only have to have 5th generation for day 0. As you can see from the Ukraine conflict, a lot of stuff keeps flying even on day 35. Okay, next question. So basically Tejas Mark II is required. Let's see what happens over there. Okay, now let me scroll down. Shadow Fury asks, is India ahead of US development of hypersonic weapons as recently stated by a US senator? Are Pakistan and China capable of reverse engineered Brahmos missile because of recent misfire incident? Okay, I'll take your first question. Presumably you're referring to Senator Jack Reed, who's from the Democratic Party. Look, I don't know what intel he has seen on whatever committee he is on to make this statement. But I can tell you this, that if the Brahmos 2 sees light of day in the next 3-4 years, then India would definitely be at par with the major powers of the world as far as hypersonic capability is concerned. And of course, then you'll ask me, what about hypersonic glide vehicles? Those are also being worked upon. You see, when you saw that whole Make 2 list or Make 1 list, the thing is that many of those systems are going to be systems for which DRDO has the IP. It's just that you are bringing in somebody for prototyping presumably from the private sector. Okay, and then what else is there? Okay, are Pakistan and China capable of reverse engineered Brahmos missile because of recent misfire incident? No, they are not. Next question. And if you've seen pictures of where which were circulating on the media, you'll see that the missile avionics part was pretty much toast because there was still some fuel in it and the whole system was burning. Anyway, next question. Corpsys GX. Is the NGF going to be merged with the NGC project into a single line of warship, and is Naval Group FREM in contention? Operating of Kaveri Marine on the cards given current scenario vis-a-vis Ukraine. Okay, to refer to, when he says NGF, he basically means next generation frigate. Is it going to be merged with the NGC project, which is the next generation corvette? I don't think so. I think these are two separate things. And this whole question of Naval Group FREM being in contention or not, we'll have to see what actually comes of it. Of course, they have been doing MOUs with a certain shipyard, obviously a defense shipyard, defense public sector shipyard and all that. Operating of Kaveri, first the Kaveri Marine has to become stable, the Kaveri Marine gas turbine. But I think there's going to be forward movement on this, and BHEL, etc. being roped in. Okay, next question. Shobi Thomas asks, why does it take so long to integrate Astra on a Tejas where the entire IP was owned by us? That is because Tejas was being cleared for other systems while the Astra was being developed. Now that the Astra has been developed, it's going to be integrated quite quickly, if you ask me. There's no problem here. And the Astra is already into rate production, as has been publicly revealed as well. So there's nothing to be worried about there, I think. Okay, Rohit asks, question 1 apparently. Can drones reduce IF squadron requirement of 42, and where do you stand on squadron requirement number? I think we need to get to 42. Drones are an add-on because the enemy is also going to have drones after all, isn't it? It's not either or. You have to keep adding stuff. You're not going to be able to create a system whereby the requirement for manned fighters goes down enough, and you can in a way that drones can sort of fill that space. Okay, Sagar Bhavsar, why is India testing too many Brahmos? Because it may be testing different things. It may be trying out different things. It is also showing that we have plenty in stock. It's obviously India's premier strike weapon at the moment. Okay, Ramu asks, What is the status of the SWIFT program? Has it made its first flight? Not to my knowledge. If it had, then I guess we would have heard about it. Let's see. Okay. Siddharth Singh asks, hello sir, why are development timelines so stretched for things like light tanks when we have the subcomponents figured out? That's because we never bothered to order them. And it's the development timelines are not really that stretched out. You will see a light tank entering service much sooner than people think. Okay, Osler asks, Pakistan will have 9 SSKs by 2024 and 13 by 2028. I don't think they'll have 9 by 2024. Okay, let's see. They have 2 very old ones which will be replaced by the incoming Chinese Yuan types. And even the 3 that they have, okay, but they won't have 9. Anyway, India only has 16 and P-75I is stillborn, only 6 planned anywhere. Where is Pak getting all the money? Well, not getting the money. They're getting the same kind of support from China right now that India got from the Soviet Union in the 70s and 80s. That is what they're getting. Friendship prices, lines of credit, so on and so forth, barter deals. China is doing its utmost to arm Pakistan conventionally. There can be no doubt about this. And that, of course, makes you wonder how the next few years are going to be like. Next question. Aditya Prakash asks, hi Saurav, are you in favor of pulling army out of CT ops in Kashmir? Yes, I am. But whether it can be done or not, only the army can answer and the Indian state can answer, obviously. Argument against that is that cause of our CT ops, our army is battle hardened. Yes, it is battle hardened. If it had to fight a defensive war like what the Ukrainians are doing against the Russians, it would have been quite good for that as well. Where you fight these skirmishes, where you aggregate, where you hide amongst the civilian population, etc. But that's not the only thing that the army is supposed to do, right? Our armies also may find itself in a role that, say, Russia finds itself vis-a-vis Ukraine. What is it going to do then? It has to be ready. It has to get out of CI. I think our soldiers are blooded enough. Now they need to see some real, on one side, high altitude development in numbers, and the army needs to understand the kind of logistics that is required for that kind of maintenance and deployment. The Chinese have built that up on the plateau. Of course, it's another matter whether they'll be able to sustain logistics across Himalayan passes while there is a war on with India. That's another matter altogether. But obviously our logistics also has to be in place, and we have to build the necessary fortifications. We have to train people to fight for, what is called conventional conflict. Next question. Agam Chadha. Would we see Indian Navy get to 200 fleet? Yes, I think we will. By the 2030s we will. Aman Rutre. Good evening, Saurav sir. By the way, my spelling is R-A-V, not B-H. It's not Saurav, it's Saurav. Good evening. The IA has changed the RFI of light tank from 27 tons to 27.5 in a year. Do you think that IA will ever buy the system from DRDO and L&T JV? Well, they'll have to buy something indigenous, that's for sure. They're not going to get anything from abroad. But then I'm not the government. So, Saptarshit DG, your thoughts on Tejas EW variant? Let's see how it turns out to be. The thought behind the EW variant is good, given that the Tejas has a relatively small cross section, radar cross section, etc. And with the EW variant, I think a wild weasel sort of variant of the Tejas is not a bad idea. Next question. We have Shivam Dubey asking, Sir, Bharat हाइपरसोनिक क्रूज मिसाइल रूस की मदद से बना रहा है या खुद से बना रहा है? I think this question has been answered. Next question. Saptarshi DG asks, does the Ukraine-Russian war show the importance of SEAD, DEAD, that is suppression of enemy air defenses, destruction of enemy air defenses capability, and also vulnerability of helicopters against manpads? Yes, you answered the question yourself, isn't it? Of course it does. That's exactly what it does. And the bottom line is, as I think I've tweeted before, the Russians, I think, had limited objectives and they thought they'll attain them very quickly. And they held back their air force to preserve total technical life, and they also needed them for routine, missions along other NATO countries, etc., and other missions. And also they wanted to preserve their PGM stocks, which means they couldn't do that many standoff strikes. And so they would have come under, the Ukrainian AD envelope, both low and high. In fact, the high envelope would have forced them to go low, and then they would have got picked off even by manpads, shoulder-launched, stingers. And that's what happened also in more than 2-3 cases. So yeah, it does. You need to suppress those, and you need to deploy your full. In fact, before you start a special military operation, you need to knock out the enemy's AD and the enemy's Air Force. Anyway, next question. Vikram Jhatmal. Oh, sorry, not Jhatmal. I'm sorry for that. Vikram Jhatwal. Sir, how does Tejas Mark II compare to Rafale F3R? Obviously, Rafale F3R carries more payload, has better combat radius, blah, blah, etc. But in terms of onboard systems, it's comparable in many respects. In terms of avionics, in terms of sensors, in terms of integration, it's quite capable. Of course, as far as build quality is concerned, we'll have to see. Because the current Rafales are obviously superior in build quality to the Tejas Mark Is. So let's see how that goes. Maybe, I am sure HAL is improving all the time, and then, the tier 1 suppliers are also improving. So I think we are going to see better build quality. We are going to see, and as far as the onboard package is concerned, it's quite competitive, I would say. Sahil Satral Karas. So what is your opinion about Chinese FM Wang Yi's visit to India? I think our external affairs minister, that is S. Jaishankar, I think he said the right thing. I think we should not at all agree to anything before they restore status quo ante 2020. So, see, I'll tell you something. The Chinese real estate sector, even if it sees a 10% correction this year, will push their economy into a technical recession. They are not very well placed. If you follow the news out of that, you can understand that they are in trouble, which is why they have done their best to limit capital inflows and block their own capital account as well. So they are not going to be in a very good shape very soon, and you will hear news about it. And then, as you can see from the Ukraine campaign, even the Russian army, which is better trained than the PLA, the way it has gone about things, the PLA, which is a much more of a conscript army with less motivated soldiers, I don't want to launch into an exposition of why I think so, is not going to do very well along the Himalayan frontier against the Indian army. Okay, despite all the firepower they may have and everything, because you see what has happened is, I think our people have built up a lot of fortifications. And you hear about, some former generals talking about missile-proof bunkers. I think many of those things have been built now. And the Chinese will not be able to prosecute a campaign with just firepower against us. Okay, so we'll be able to withstand their waves. And then, what will happen to them, they know. And it's not that we are not going to go on the offensive anywhere either. So I think this is the Chinese trying to feel us out, but we should remain strident, keep building up. Okay, next question. Okay, Saxa. Sir, are Indian aircraft carriers obsolete? No, they are not. How will ISC2 change that if it happens, or is it not required at all? No, ISC2 would have been good to have, but it's a matter of priorities and funding. Right now, SSN should be the priority, and something just like ISC1 should be built with improvements. Aircraft carriers are not obsolete. And not Indian aircraft carriers, those smaller, medium-sized carriers, basically. They're not obsolete. Okay, let me just scroll down. We've already come to the halfway mark almost. Okay. Questions keep coming. Okay, Anand Krishna asks, is there any plan to equip the T-90 with active protection system? I think there should be. There probably is, because we are developing an APS. Are we developing, or is there any plan to develop an APS? We are developing an APS. An active protection system is actively being developed. So there is every plan to equip all our tanks with an APS. It will be a more modern APS than you've seen earlier. Anyway, next question. Ashish Har. Saurav Jha, Are our Rudram 2-3 comparable to Russian Kinzhal? No, not quite. Not quite. Let's leave it there. But a Rudram 2-3 are going to be a handful for any AD. They're not going to be able to handle it. Okay. Then we have a question from Aditya Prakash asking, what do you think have been the learnings from the Ukraine war in what we have seen so far? Okay, I'll tell you what I think are the learnings. One is the Russian campaign design was poor. Secondly, as a lot of observers, including myself, have understood, their overhaul was nowhere near complete. They have some very good units like the 1st Brigade Guard Army and all near Moscow, but the rest of their army has not been overhauled. Okay, the Russian, let us see what are the lessons for the Indian army from this. Lesson number 1. Command, control and communications for any ingressing force is of paramount importance, along with logistics obviously. There was once this move to develop the tactical communication system that went nowhere. I think that has to be revived and that has to be really pushed. There's something that's been released under Make 1. I think it needs to be, this really has to be given the go ahead. You know, WANET, MANET, these things are not just terms. Okay, these are very important, and we have to have secure mobile comms across the Indian army, and we need that. We need that secure, unjammable mobile comms basically, so that forces can move forward, and you don't have a situation where your commanders have to go forward to find out what's happening at the front. We have to invest even more greatly in ISR systems, especially spaceborne, launch on demand systems, etc. Second lesson, logistics, as always, the key. No army, an army fights on its stomach, as was said. Quite true even now. You can't get into a situation, and it is poor. Campaign planning was obviously poor. Many of the Russian soldiers were not, they just did not have the logistics in place for anything more than maybe a few days. So, if your plan A doesn't work and you're not at all prepared for plan B, then what the hell are you doing here and there? Anyway, but the bottom line is that logistics, especially along the Himalayas. And that is what we need to keep building up, regardless of how many Wang Yis visit India. Zhou Enlai had also visited India in the run-up to 1962, in 1960. And I have read interviews between him and Nehru was also very forcefully telling him that we were not happy with what they are doing. I mean, irrespective of what you hear, I'll show you the exchanges. But that is not enough. See, Nehru and his people were just not willing to, and you could argue some way not even in a position to invest the kind of resources that were required to face the Chinese along the Himalayan frontier. And that is why we lost in 62. That is the main reason, apart from all the others that are advanced. In the course of the 50s, we just were not willing to put up the kind of money that was needed. I hope that this government does not end up making the same mistake, and it actually increases the layout that is required for taking on the Chinese along the Himalayas. This talk of, the Chinese are making us spend more over there because they want to keep us away from the Indian Ocean, that doesn't work. Right now the Indian Navy, and with more A2AD systems based in the Andaman, is capable of taking on whatever the South Fleet of the plan can throw at us. Right now they will try to play games along the Himalayan frontier, and that is where we need to, if required, embarrass them. That is going to make the real difference. Anyway, I'll write a whole article on why I think this argument doesn't cut it. So these things, C2, logistics, campaign design, soldier morale. Soldiers should be clear about why they are headed somewhere. But of course, in our case, I think our soldiers will be very clear, because they won't be fighting an enemy just like that. If we had to send our soldiers into Sri Lanka, then we would have had to answer the same kind of things that the Russian general staff has to answer. But when our soldiers will be highly motivated when fighting with either Pakistan or China, I have no doubts about that. So that is one thing. And the other thing is, of course, rocketry. You see, because now what has happened is, with our enemies, with our current lot of enemies, we are faced with, they are also putting up integrated air defenses. integrated air and missile defenses. So we need to heavily invest in ground launch rocket system and ground launch surface to surface missile systems as well, because that is going to be the key, going to be a key enabler for air power, as I have argued at length elsewhere. Okay, next question. So we have another question here. Okay, these have been answered. Yuvraj Singh asks, hello good sir, how are you doing? I'm doing all right, thanks to the support from people like you. Logical Song asks, what kind of tech stack, CPU, OS, runtime language, etc. will India's defense sector be using for the next few years? Obviously, in the next few years, it will still be imported mostly. But I think going forward, I think many of these things will get OS. OS, of course, has been indigenized and was trialed in the Northern Command and all also. So that is not an issue. Runtime, not an issue. Language, no. CPU, yeah, that will take some time. But designed in India, fabricated elsewhere, very likely. Okay, Vedang. Your opinion on whether government will scrap the MRFA and expedite Tejas Mark II? Let's see what happens. I don't think MRFA will be scrapped. I think MRFA is on. Next question, Ritik Juyal. Shepherd Media Group 2 days ago wrote an article which mentioned that Pakistan is making ASA radars based on GaN technology. What's your take? Let's see how stable they are. It's basically China supplying them with this stuff anyway. Unless, of course, you believe certain... Anyway, forget about them. Demo, are there any plans to upgrade T90S to T90M standard? Well, T90 will be upgraded. Standard may be even higher than T90M. Next question. Manish Panwar, how can a missile be misfired seriously? No comment. Rishabh Kumar, doesn't DRDO already have LFRJ technology because of Brahmos missile? LFRJ is, of course, liquid fueled ramjet engine technology. It does have, not because of Brahmos, but because of DRDL's own efforts, it does have the technology for it. Brahmos is a low risk proposition, if that is what you're getting at. Okay, next question. We have Sahil Satralkar asking, so what is the status and capability of our indigenous ballistic missile defense? I think the phase 1 is complete. Some over-the-horizon radars were brought in. The radars which used to be for which, the purposes for which Israeli and French systems used to be used are now are now going to be serviced by indigenous systems. The interceptors themselves have demonstrated their capability, as has been reported also. I think Pakistan's first generation BMs aren't that effective anymore in the face of our DMD. But it has to be rolled out on a major level. Okay, well, it has to be rolled out at scale. That's what I meant. Anyway, Dave B17, where are we with Astra 2 and SFDR based Astra 3? These are in development. Development come user trials of the Astra 2 are probably going to be underway soon. It's been reported also, I think. SFDR development trials, you'll see air launch trials soon. Okay. Vinod Reddy asks, is India capable of reclaiming Gilgit, Baltistan given terrain? This is, completely a hypothetical question. As you said, terrain. There's a reason why the LOC is where it is. Again, there's a lot of misconception about why the Indian Army stopped where it did in 1948. There are many reasons for that. There was no way on earth the Indian Army could have taken on taken Gilgit or Skardu and held on to those. Let me be very clear about this in 1948. Today, a lot of preparation will be required, and don't forget that there is the new nuclear deterrence is in play. So these are all hypothetical questions. There are different future lies ahead. Salami slicing, maybe depends on what the idea is. But as of now, I think the LOC is stable. Okay, next question. We have another question here. Okay, it scrolls down very quickly. Vimal Bhaskar, will Arjun Tank get Israeli APS? No, I don't think I think Arjun Tank will get an indigenous APS only. Vedang, do you believe that India should start developing supersonic drones which are capable of performing A2A roles? Well, preliminary work should be done on this. I agree there with that. Okay. Yuvraj Singh asks, So what do you make of the recent visit of Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi to India? I think I have answered that already. What were their objectives and what came out of it? I don't think much has come out of it. Their objectives was to see if they could get India to some deal, which nevertheless stayed favorable to them as far as the actual ground position was concerned, with them conceding only a little bit. I don't think Vijay, and they are very worried about trade ties going forward. See, this whole thing of the larger issue, that is only something that the Chinese and their dalals in India want. Okay, but that was a mistake on India's part. Without settling the border, India should have never allowed trade with China to spiral like this. It should have invested in manufacturing a lot earlier. It should have encouraged our large players not to simply let their tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers just wither away, which is what happened in many industries, by the way. And they started depending on MSMEs in China. I'm talking about the time between, the 5-year period after China joined the WTO, China's accession to the WTO. Hopefully these trends will be reversed now. There is no question of settling anything with the Chinese, no question at all. And if anybody is selling you that Kool-Aid, don't drink it. Next question. Shibon Mondol asks, what is the status of Nirbhay cruise missile? I think you will see some tests. I think there was even a report that it's been deployed. So go by it. Foxfin, is Russia toast now? Not quite. It isn't toast now, but its performance has been subpar. And like I said, a lot of observers, including myself, had a little too high estimation of them in some ways. So their performance is definitely subpar. They're not toast. They have most of the coastline almost under their control. They only need Odessa. And once they get those railheads that they want, I think they will make a push to. They're still negotiating basically with the Ukrainian forces in that Donbas pocket. That they're still probably giving them the chance to go into Western Ukraine across the Dnipro River. But if they keep fighting there, I think the jaws of a pincer will be shut along the Mariupol-Poltava axis. As far as Kyiv and all is concerned, I think they have dug in that. They are not going to make a forward movement there. Though really, if they don't want to be, and as far as the sanctions are concerned, those are biting. But the Russians will also engage countermeasures sooner or later. So you might be seeing some backroom discussions happening there as well. Abhinav asks, when will XRIM be operational? Sometime this decade. Tushar Sharma asks, can you please give an update on the Indian drone development and also your views on Turkey's TB2 drones in the Ukraine war? Drone development, you know what is going on. Rustam 2 user trials. Rustam 1 now called weaponized version called Archer user trials. TB2 drones in and of course you'll see a new Hail UAV. You'll see a jet-powered Hail UAV also and all that. From India, that is. Turkey's TB2 drones in Ukraine war, well, they managed to pull off a few strikes on. If you just keep your convoys parked and don't move them into any sort of cover, and you run out of fuel for your, for your tellers and everything, they'll be picked off by a low-flying drone. You see, the big game changer for when you talk about Turkey, TB2 and all, is the munitions that come with it. Turkey has done a lot of work on things like the MAM-L, MAM-C kind of systems, which are quite lightweight but have a long range. That is what is making the difference. Along with, of course, Ukrainians are being supplied a lot of high-level intelligence support by America, real intelligence support, not like what they gave to us during the standoff with China. I'm sorry, but it wasn't anything great. Okay, and so those are helping the Ukrainians pick off. Yeah, and see, the Russians have not been able to move their layered defenses into Ukraine, which is why you need mobile, SAM systems of various ranges. You need SPARGs. You need mobile strategic electronic warfare systems. You need a lot of things. Again, this is a discussion for another day. Okay, next question is Sahil Negi asks, there was a news that DRDO is going to upgrade 1000 plus BMP-2 for Indian Army. Is it true? If true, then what's the point of FMBV? You mean FICV? So 1000 plus BM2, yeah, well, the upgrade will happen. There are upgrade packages already. There was one for almost 700 units, BMP 2Ks, 2 and 2Ks. Okay, next question, Shubhade. Hello Laura, Jai Jagannath to you as well. Just wanted to thank you for the strong voice for real indigenization in the defense sector. Jai Hind to you as well. Abhinavas, can swarm drone accompany infantry movement to counter ATGMs? Well, things on these lines have to be thought. For instance, if before your armored advances, you will need these unmanned ground vehicles to go and survey the situation that lies ahead and maybe even draw fire on itself to reveal enemy positions. Same thing can be done with swarm drones as well. Use it for ISR. They go up ahead and they force the enemy to show its hand. You can't have the Russia kind of situation where you have these tank columns advancing without covering infantry along a known axis, not doing deep maneuvers in the countryside, nothing, and just going straight into a built-up area. I mean, that's pretty ridiculous if you ask me. Okay, next question. Yeah, so you will need these unmanned scouts and you will need them in numbers. Okay, Varun Gandal asks, sir, how does Astra Mark III compare with Meteor? I think Astra Mark III compares very well with Meteor. And once you have a situation where you use if the Astra Mark III gets an ASA seeker, then it'll be better than the Meteor in my view. Although the Japanese and the French had the British, Japanese and the French had a joint program to arm the Meteor with an ASA also, ASA seeker. Avi, do you think next time an armed Brahmos will be misfired? No comment. The learning key. Status of light tank, how much is it needed in the Himalayas? I think the number for the light tank has been given, right? 354 units is what they want. How many of those will be needed in the Himalayas? Let the armored corps decide. Okay, next question. Kalyan Kaushik. Any updates on Pralay, Pranash, SSMs? Do they possess MARV? Can Agni Prime be considered as an aircraft carrier? I don't think Pralay or Pranash definitely not MARVs. And Pralay can be armed with a MARV. You'll see decoys on it like you saw with the Iskandar, I think. This is my view. This is not what DRDO or anybody else is saying. Can Agni Prime be considered as an aircraft carrier? Aircraft killer? Yes. Agni Prime can be used in an anti-ship ballistic missile role, as Avinash Chandra, former DRDO chief, I think has also stated publicly. Next question. Okay. Yosap. Hey Saurav, I read somewhere that DRDO has made single crystal blade tech and some other key tech. So why does it need French assistance? What key technologies are still missing? Single crystal blade tech has been developed, better than second generation now. Some other key tech, but there are many materials that go into the hot section of the, materials that go into the hot section of the gas turbine, which have not yet been indigenized or developed indigenously, and that's still a work in progress. They are being developed indigenously, but they're not stable enough, I think. So that could help. I think overall systems engineering of GTRE was not bad as far as the Kaveri was concerned, but then the French French are mostly needed for help on the material side of things. Okay, Admiral Kenobi asks, any idea about NGC being included in the procurement list of FY 2022-23? No, I can't comment on this. And RFI was released in mid-2010s, but later deleted. Will the RFP be released this year? Contract signed for production? Sorry, can't comment on this. Kshitij Goyal, sir, any update on P75I and MRFA deal? MRFA is on. P75I, I'm sure people are scratching their heads right now. Anyway, Vimal Bhaskar, what will happen to the propulsion of Ukraine origin in Navy platforms? I've already answered this. Okay, and will the Indian Navy adopt electric propulsion in major surface combatants? Yes, it will, by and by. Next question. Anime Cat asks, do you think AMCA production will be as slow as Tejas production? No. I think you see, India has crossed the threshold even on the production side. You're not going to see such slow production. You're not going to see a repeat of all the way the Tejas Mark 1 IOC and FOC was executed. That's not how things are going to be going forward. Can the tech of India's be given to a private company so they can make a decent rifle that can be used in police and law enforcement? Private company with its own tech has been making decent rifles, but how many buyers are they getting? This thing about India can't make a rifle is all nonsense. India can make good rifles. It's a question of what the military and others want. People like Triple S, etc., are making pretty decent systems. So let's see what happens over there. Okay, Rohit asks, with respect to Newland's visit, was it just F-15EX peddling a soft regime change jibe to the current government for India to change UN position? Why does no one raise Op Searchlight and where democracy stood? Yeah, well, the hypocrisy of the United States on matters related to democracy and freedom are well known, and matters related to war as well. While I obviously cannot condone, the long, prolonged Russian war in Ukraine of attrition, but the fact of the matter is that America is in no position to. It's like the pot calling the kettle black. This hysterical propaganda that is going on in America and the so civilized stand that they are taking is completely misplaced in my view. I mean, what have they done in terms of launching unilateral wars for the last 30 years? And how many people have died as collateral damage? How many civilians have died in those wars? Anyway, next question. Okay, we have a question from Shubhade. Dada, how important now has it become? How important is it now has it now become to increase the stockpile of ATGM, long-range rockets and SRPMs after the Russo-Ukrainian war? More important than ever before. The authorized holding size for ATGMs, as has been publicly reported in the past, is over 82,000 units for the Indian Army. So I think the scaled holding should be attained. Subodh Deshpande asks, do we have space-based early warning system? If not, then are we working on it? Yeah, we are, and we need it sooner than later. Shekhar Singh, Namaskar. I read somewhere that we make AL-31 FP from scratch and testing our SCP on AL-31 under Project Ganga. Is it possible to increase its thrust and use it in Su-30 MKI engine upgrade? Yeah, but by how much will you increase the thrust? 10%? So from 127... No, 10% is a lot actually. Maybe 5%. Yeah, maybe it is possible. At least the engine will become more stable in terms of MTBF, MTBO and all that. Okay, next question. Elron Skywalker asks, why is cybersecurity still ignored? Well, it's not being ignored anymore. I don't see things being done on it. When cyber warfare is the future, please share examples if there's something going on. Things are going on. They're best not detailed on a public platform. Next question. And okay, we have Arijit Palit asking, why is the indigenization effort not as sincere basically you're asking why aren't the other branches of the armed forces as sincere in their indigenization efforts as the Navy has been? Well, I think they are also sincere in terms of indigenization. And now, given what has happened worldwide, I think they're going to be even more sincere than in the past. But they were sincere. They had their own compulsions, I guess. Next question. Okay, I've answered these. So let me now just circle back and see what other questions were there. Okay, HAL 2021 had asked, is the new MRFA circus being done only to dangle the carrot before global OEMs long enough so that Indian alternatives mature? After all, even ASQR isn't finalized, and now God knows who will pay $20 billion. No, I think MRFA is a serious acquisition program. I don't think it's a mere ruse or anything. Okay, next question. Rohit Q1. Ramu. Okay, I've answered this question as well. Okay. Rohit asks, this is Rohit's question number 2. Su-30 MKI, how vulnerable is it in terms of spares? In worst case, how much spares can India manufacture? Well, spares have been stockpiled because there was this, move to increase the serviceability rate of the Su-30 MKI. And many of the spares can be manufactured in India. It's not as vulnerable as people think, but it is not invulnerable either. Okay, so next question. Aman Rautre asks, so what's the status of SSN project? Will Iron settle for indigenous tech on propulsion, or will we try to get some TOT from France? This is a billion-dollar question actually. Let's see what happens here. There's a multi-pronged effort going on in this. Okay, Kartik Udupa asks, just saying thank you for giving us more hope on Indian indigenization efforts without completely bad-mouthing Indian military-industrial complex. Right, I appreciate what you're saying, and I don't want to badmouth anything just like that. I try to give a balanced perspective on everything based on what I know. And as you can see, the truth usually lies somewhere in the middle about everything, whether it be Russia and Ukraine, or whether it be about, our indigenous military-industrial complex, etc. But it's improving. It's much improved, and the threshold has been crossed. We have a lot of these old, people talking about this or that. They really don't know what is going on because they simply do not keep abreast with what is happening. Their views are still where, are basically based on what they had seen and and a lot of time has passed since they saw what they saw basically. Okay, and they are not aware of it. And in any case, many of them aren't very technically, proficient to begin with. So that is another problem. In fact, this is why you need many more technically sound people in the military. The Navy has that, and that is one of the reasons why it has been more successful in terms of indigenization. Okay, next question. We have answered these and these. These have been answered as well. These have been answered. Okay, Siddharth Singh asks, can Ukrainian turbines be replaced if we wish to with Rolls-Royce ones? Is it at all possible? Anything is possible, but it's not so simple. The issue of interfaces, there are many issues. Kaveri would take time to mature for fleet-wide development. Yes, it would. It would. Next question, Aditya Prakash. Okay, I've answered this in length, I think. Okay, answered that as well. That. Okay, another question from Siddharth Singh was a lot of questions. So progress on A319 and A320 base AVAX induction timeline, and since DRDO would take one for research, there is talk of a A319 base site SIGINT aircraft. How many aircraft are required? Well, the numbers have been talked about. I don't think we should go into how many are required. Let the Air Force decide that. But the requirements are significant. Okay, next question. We have a question from... Let's go down. Kartika, sir, give me some hope on Astra Mark 2 and Mark 3. I've already answered this, I think. Waiting for more than a year on this. कुछ न्यूज़ ही नहीं है इसके बारे में, क्योंकि इसके ऊपर काम चल रहा है, इसलिए न्यूज़ नहीं है. Whenever something is being worked on assiduously and and is actually being progressed, you may not hear about it for a while, and then you may suddenly hear about it. Okay, next question. Okay, answered these. Lot of questions about NGF, NGMV and all those things. So you'll see them when you see them. Okay, next. Answered these. Okay, now we have new question. We have more questions here. MG has sent $5. Well, thank you. Logical Songs asks, how many comms and recon satellites does India expect to lose in an all-out war? Can't say how many we expect to lose, but we need plenty. Next. Sachs. Which source is authentic to learn about Indian defense? It's very much a mess on the web. Delhi Defense Review, obviously. That is your source, your authoritative source on Indian defense matters without bias. Now somebody will say I have a pro-indigenization bias. I think this is the sort of bias that all of you should have if you care about India. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to what should I say? I'm going to gloss over the failings of Indian indigenous industry or paint rosy stories. I have never done that. You can check what I've written over the years. Next question. Okay, Shadow Fury asks, does India have enough military satellites in orbit for weather communication, whether it be for communication observation? No, I don't think so. I think we need many more. Does India have any similar agency like US Space Force? No. India only has a defense space agency. US Space Force is a service in its own right by itself. We don't have anything like that. No. If yes, then what's the state? We don't have anything like that. We have a defense space agency and we have a whole bunch of other alphabet soup agencies. But we need many more assets, space-borne assets, space-based assets. Okay. Copsis GX asks, how is the Samyukta EW system compared to the incoming Scorpius G system? Or are they different in terms of employment strategies? There's no point in my answering this. No point. But Samyukta itself has been upgraded over the years and new stuff is coming in, as you also know. Anyway. Siddharth Singh asks another question. Sir, ALH Mark IIIs are now being regularly seen being deployed on frontline Indian Navy ships. Do you think they have finally made peace with it after making a public spat about it? Well, they better make peace with it. Because like I said, there's the issue of the Ka-27s. And you see, the reason why you can use the Dhruv in the kind of roles you use the Ka-27s is because, avionics and sensor technology has not remained static. You don't need a helicopter of exactly the same kind of all-up weight as the Ka-27 to perform that role. And even in terms of loiter time, etc., I don't know exactly how well the Ka-27 performs. Somebody in the Navy will be able to tell you that. Okay, next question. Okay. Yuvraj Singh asks, I wonder how long would it take for our army to equip our soldiers as the US Army does, guns with sights, GPS, glasses and gloves for every soldier. More than GPS, again, our space-borne. It should be our own IRNSS and also new, work on position, navigation and timing should be taken forward quickly because our soldiers should be able to, position themselves, navigate and time their efforts even in a situation where global positioning systems are denied, right? So you need to work more on things like cold atoms technology, etc., etc. There are many other things. Okay, and obviously this should be a key item. Ukrainian soldiers armed with good gear are giving a very good account of themselves. Also, this notion that close combat is passé, I don't know why people are saying that. A lot of Russian soldiers are dying in close combat only, by the way, with Ukrainian forces. Logical Song asks, does Brahmos misfire show where it would be headed if it was not misfired? No comment. Ornab Chatterjee asks, can single-engine fighters like Tejas Mark II operate DEWs? What is DRDO doing to beat hypersonic projectiles? DRDO is obviously concerned about hypersonic projectiles and they are working on it. Can Tejas Mark II operate DEWs? Well, you had Raytheon showing an F-16 with a DEW as well in some promo, wasn't it? Anyway, let's see. Okay. Hirak Sinha asks, is Defense Expo going to happen or this year or is it cancelled? It's postponed and let's see what happens. Okay. Now let's scroll down. Okay, Kshitij Goyal asks, sir, any update on P75 and MRFA deal? I've answered this. Let's scroll down right till the end to see if there are any new questions. Okay, Real Crypto Prediction asks, Tejas Mark II EW system equal to Rafale EW system? It's good. Tejas Mark II's EW system will be quite competitive. Next question. Akash Pathik, any DRDO MOS project for our fighters here? Yeah, you have DCMAWS, which is going to go on to the Su-30 MKI. So it's there. And then, of course, missile approach warning systems are of three kinds, actually. Three types are there. We have chosen for the dual color missile approach warning system path. Let's see. Okay. You have a question from Frankenstein CS. All new indigenous platforms need indigenous power plants. Yes. That is exactly where we should go, but you need to put up that kind of money, and you need to order in numbers for that kind of thing to happen. FICB, FRRC, FICB, FRCB will see indigenous power plants. Light tank, indigenous power plant. NGMBT, or okay, indigenized power plant probably for the light tank. NGMBT, indigenous power plant. HAL, ALH, we can substitute. LUH, yeah, MRH. AMCA, that is the big one, which is going to take off under the SPF. P-16 destroyer, obviously. So, any update? There's nothing really to update right now, except that work is underway on all of these. Ravish Chandra, about recent no import indigenization list, is it achievable in the given timeline considering Indian industries design, development, production and capability and capacity? We'll write about this. I think most of it is achievable, if you are referring to the latest list for subsystems, etc. Monal Patel, can Tapas be used as an ISR platform? It is meant to be used as an ISR platform only. Tapas BH201 is an ISR platform. Krishna Jha, what can we learn from Russia-Ukraine war, especially in terms of air defense systems and drones used by Ukrainians? I have answered this question already. Okay, I think we have run out of time today. Some of you have very generously supported us. Others, I hope, are helping spread the word. If they want to support, you can support. You can use the super sticker here, or you can send your support to this particular UPI ID, which I am putting in the chat box. And do spread the word about us more and more, because what you do here does have a bearing on what happens on the indigenous landscape. If you care about indigenization, help us, push our case forward even more. Okay, I'll take one question. Okay, there are a couple of questions. I'll just answer them. Desi Fact asks, so Neeraj Chopra is going to win in 2024 Paris Olympics. I hope he does. He has already won once before. I hope he beats the 90-meter mark, which is a sort of the next goal for him, I think. Okay, and the next question is there's a question from AB. Why does India have fewer nuclear weapons than Pakistan? We don't know how many nuclear weapons India actually has. That's what Hans Christensen and company say and think. Okay, Abhishek Kale asks, what is the role of artillery in Russia-Ukraine war? You can see the role. Old-fashioned artillery always makes a difference. You bring it in, and then so you need to proliferate perhaps precision guided munitions and terminally guided munitions, etc. for the future. Tube artillery will always play a role going forward, at least for the next 30-40 years. Right, I think we are done for today. Thank you for tuning in, and do keep supporting us. Jai Hind.